Hi, it's Paula from Plantland again, and we're finally doing a video on pruning. A lot of you have asked for this. This is going to be about fruit trees today, and we're here in my yard, so you have to excuse a little bit of traffic noise and maybe a little bit of dogs barking noise and blue jay noise, but we'll try and get through it, me and Michelle. We're going to look at a couple cherry trees that we need to prune on this property. The first thing to look at is this one that I pruned yesterday. And if you look at this tree, I can kind of illustrate some of the things that we're trying to accomplish with pruning. The first thing we're always trying to accomplish with pruning is getting the center of the tree. Michelle, I don't know, are you up there? Yeah. Is getting the center of the tree open to air and light. Because what ripens your fruit, what keeps your tree healthy, is making sure that there's air and light getting into the center of this tree. So when we're pruning, we prune away branches that are growing into the center of the tree. Now these trees get pruned every year, so you're not going to see a ton of cuts as obvious on this. I've left one cherry tree unpruned, and we're going to go to town on that one. But this one, you'll see a few places where we've made cuts over the years where things were coming in, growing into the center of the tree. The other thing about this tree that you might notice is it's pretty short. Almost all the pruning I did yesterday, I was able to do standing on the ground. The number one cause of emergency room visits for people my age is falling off ladders. So we don't climb up on ladders if we can avoid it here. This it's easier to prune if I'm keeping the tree short. It's also much easier to pick the fruit if I'm keeping the tree short. So this tree is done for the season. And I want to show you, this is about how much I took off of it. This is the pile of wood I took off of it. And some of this, like this, these are suckers that grew the previous season. Those aren't going to produce fruit. And then I just decided at some point, I forget where this came from on the tree, that this branch was just causing kind of trouble. So I just decided to take this branch off. The general rule of thumb is going to be that you're never going to take more than 1/3 of the wood off a tree. Now on trees like this that get pruned every year, that's pretty easy to accomplish, to stay within that guideline. If it's an older tree on a property you just bought and you're trying to rehab it, it's a very important rule of thumb to follow, where you're only taking about 1/3 of the wood off in any one season. And that means some old overgrown trees are going to take more than one season to get back into shape. But the takeaway from this tree should be that you're keeping the center open for light and air to get into it, and that I'm keeping the height down so that I don't have to climb tall ladders to either prune or pick fruit. So that's the basic general idea for pruning on a cherry tree like this. Now we're going to go over to one that I didn't prune. The next thing I like to mention is that you should use good pruning tools. These are my Falcos that are 30+ years old. These have had 2 trips to the burn barrel, one of them very recently. Still perfectly serviceable pruners. Plantland sells Falcos. I highly recommend them. They're expensive, but like I say, these are 30+ years old and have been to the burn table twice. I think this is on about its 3rd or 4th blade. One of the things I really like about Falcos, every single part on this is replaceable. Down to the smallest screw, you can actually order a replacement for it. In the burn barrel, the little rubber bumpers that go here burned off, and I really am thinking I need to order a new pair of those. One of the other things is that you should keep all your tools sharp before you head out for things like this. Friday, I spent part of the day sharpening my pruners, my husband's pruners, both our loppers, and the blade on our pole pruner. So, back to pruning. This tree is a good cherry producing tree, and I think these are all Lamberts on these in here. So you'll see a few things that are obvious. This right here, this is one of these 2 trees. These are trees we inherited with the house, and this tree had been allowed to get way too tall at one point. So over time I had worked it down, and then at one point I actually cut the center out of it completely. That's what this big flat cut is here. And it always sends up this kind of stuff. And this is a good example of stuff that needs to come off. And I'm going to get over here by Michelle to show you. Michelle wants to zoom in. Can you see how this branch has this wrinkling at the bottom of it? This branch has this wrinkling at the bottom of it, like that. That's a fruiting spur on a fruit tree. This is true on cherries, it's true on apples, it's true on plums. This branch that I cut off, you'll notice has none of that on it. This is a whip. This is never going to produce fruit, which is the reason why it's one of the first things we go after. We get rid of those whips. So it's really important to begin to be able to identify the difference between a fruiting spur like this and a non-fruiting spur like this. You cut as few of these as possible off. You cut nearly all of these off, if not all of them. Occasionally when you have something like a really old apple on a property you've just purchased, you'll see what are really actually older whips that have gotten too big. They can be a big caliper. Well, actually this was practically a whip here. It was never going to produce fruit, so it needed to come off. Now on this tree, we'll see that there's, the first thing I'm going to look for is I'm going to look for any signs of damage. We have bears here, we have raccoons here, we have turkeys here, and if you didn't get the last cherry off the top of the tree, there's a very good chance that the bear decided he should climb up it and get it off, and he may have broken a branch in the process. But I don't see any damage here, but if I saw damaged branches, and by that I mean a broken branch, that would be one of the first things I would cut off. Remember, I'm counting that towards my tally of wood I'm taking off. The next thing I look at is for branches that are either crossed or going to cross, or branches that are headed in towards the center. This is a good example of a branch that's headed in towards the center. Can you get a good angle on it? Mm-hmm. This one you can see, and this is growth that just happened last year. This isn't something I've let go. This has just happened. So this branch, I probably have been cutting it along in here, but now it's headed in towards the center. So I'm actually going to take my loppers Now you'll see lots of pruning advice online about cutting at certain angles, and we are going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about one cut. But for the most part on these fruit trees that are getting pruned all the time, I don't worry so much about leaving nubs and angles. There's two different schools of thought. Either you should leave lots of nub, and that's healthier for the tree, or you should cut them very flush. And so there's some people that will tell you that's healthier for the tree. It's two different schools of thought, and you can find good information on both. So we've cut off a branch that's going to the inside. We're going to take a little break here for a minute because my neighbor's scraping his driveway and I know he needs to get it done. So we'll come back and get back to some more specific pruning on this tree. This is Paula from Plantland, and happy fruit growing. This is Paula from Plantland, and we're back to pruning the cherry trees. I think my neighbor's almost done with cleaning his driveway. This here shows one of the things that we try to get rid of when we're pruning. Do you see how this branch and this branch are crossing here? That's going to come to no good. Better to take off a branch when it's a little bitty branch like this, and I can do it with a hand pruner, than wait till it's a much bigger branch and I have to use a saw. So this branch, because it's crossing here, I'm going to leave this branch because this one is coming back in this way. So I only need to take one of them off. I'm going to take that one off. Then I'm going to look, see over here how this one kind of cuddled up to each other a little bit and were crossed like this. And that tells me that's not a great branch either. So I'm going to take that branch off. And what I'm doing here is I've got this branch coming out. I kind of work the tree along the sides, so I'm working one side of it at a time. So this whole mess in here, let's see, this branch is coming out and it's going to get into trouble at the end of this branch. So I'm going to get into here, snip it off. You can tell I have nice sharp pruners, no fooling around. These are just some branches that have died that at some point are probably going to poke somebody in the eye when they're picking cherries, so sometimes I take those off. That's just some cleanup. And then we get to another interesting thing. Some of these branches now, I'm going to do a header cut. And what that means is you can see that branch is getting a little high. I can't quite reach up and touch it. So what I'm going to do is I want to shorten that branch. So I want to come down. These are fruiting spurs. These are things I know are going to produce fruit. I'm going to come down to this one, just making a choice to shorten this branch, and that will make this branch, this branch, this branch, and this branch out, which I know will mean some more pruning crossing later, but for now that's going to be a good thing. When I'm doing this kind of cutting, I am going to cut at an angle, and what I want you to see is I'm above that bud, and I've cut the longer part of the angle above the bud, not the short part of the angle next to the bud. So what that means is, if I can find that branch that came off, well, we'll just whack it up.
I think he's down there. He's right there, Paula. Right there. Isn't that him?
Right there. Okay, what that means is if I was cutting here, I wouldn't want to do that. Okay? So we're going to take another quick pause and be right back while the tractor goes by. So we're talking about the buds on pruning, and you can see the difference between these two cuts. On this cut, the longer part of that cut is above the bud, and that's the correct way to do it. On this one, the shorter part of that cut is above the bud, and that's the wrong way to do it. You want as much wood as possible on the side where the bud is so that you're protecting that bud. So back to this tree. Again, because these are trees that get pruned all the time, they don't really have that many structural problems. I'm going to head the end off of that bud. That guy's kind of going to go up into there and cause trouble. And remember what I said earlier about we're always trying to make cuts while branches are small, and we can do them with a set of hand pruners as opposed to anything bigger. This branch here needs to be headed. At that one, bringing that height down, continuing to bring that height down. And I can see, this isn't going to work. We're going to take a break again. So now I see a branch here that I think is getting too high, that's getting too tall, that I don't really want to have to deal with later. So I'm taking that one out because it was in the way of my pruners. And then I'm switching to my loppers. These are loppers that you can adjust the handles on. For a short person like me, that's really great. The other thing about that long handle is it gives you good leverage. So I can take a branch like that needs to come out. And what I've done there is brought down some height. I've taken some height down. I'm going to get branches growing out more than up. And so this branch here is another whip that's not going to produce fruit. And this branch I'm going to take out because, again, it's just giving me too much height. I'm a short person, so I like my trees to be short. So with that, working this side some more. Get my pruners out of my Plantland sweatshirt. What's wrong with this branch? It's going in. Instead of going down or instead of going out that way, it's headed back into there. And so air and light's not going to get to any fruit that grows on that. That's not a fruiting spur, and I could tell that. Remember earlier we talked about fruiting spurs versus whips? Okay. So this branch actually looks pretty good if we look at the structure of it. That's not a bad branch. So this branch here, if Michelle wants to show you the whole branch, is in pretty good shape. You can see I'm just standing on the ground. I'm not standing on any kind of ladder. I've got lots of fruiting buds, fruiting spurs coming out that are all here right at mouth level, so I can just eat cherries right off the tree. I don't have to use a ladder to either pick or prune this tree, and that's what a lot of us should be aiming for. So this tree we would just go around, then I would come over to this side. This branch here probably I think I probably will leave that because it wouldn't hurt to get a nice lower branch coming out here. What I'm going to do is make that header cut to try and get some of these to branch out and fill in this space. Here as we come to this branch, I've got a whip, a non-fruiting whip. I've got a branch I want to shorten, keep it from going too high. Branch I want to shorten pretty far down. See how high up that one's getting? I'm going to take that one down quite a bit. And then I'll probably take that off. It's just one of those ones that you're going to run into when you're mowing the lawn. So that's a pretty basic overview of pruning a fruit tree. We've covered most of the basics in this little thing. I'm going to turn Michelle around to show you a fruit tree that hasn't been pruned in years. This is one that the bear, it's a cherry, that the bear damaged quite a few years ago now. And without naming names, there's someone else who lives in this household who runs the chainsaw, who I keep asking to cut this tree down. And he hasn't. And you can see this is a neglected tree. Bringing this tree back would involve getting rid of all of this upright growth. So something like this. You could do it. You could conceivably go through this and get rid of all of this kind of growth and start bringing this tree back down. Getting rid of all this growth that's come up on the trunk, all the growth that's going straight up, and then start working these branches to try and get them a branch like this. No, that's like this. A branch like this that you could head off, try and get these to come and grow. So that's Paula from Plantland. Happy pruning.